Welcome to Sure Wins MMA. Today, we're joined by a man who plays a pivotal role behind the scenes. Someone who's one of the most respected gyms in the mixed martial arts as a general manager at Jackson Wink MMA. He's helped guide and develop world champions as well as elite UFC contenders, some of the most dangerous fighters on the planet. His name is Michael Lyubimov, and
Yes,
we appreciate you taking the time today. How are you?
very well, thank you.
Let's start here. For the fans that may not understand everything you knew, what exactly as a role as your general manager of Jackson Wink MMA, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Um, Anything that you can possibly think of. 24/7 operation of, as they say, one of the greatest combat sports academies, Jackson Wink MMA Academy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This is a legacy here, so with a lot of people knocking on the door all the time. I deal with all kind of inquiries and people trying to come to the camp, train with us. Um, Answering phone calls, emails. We have about 50 to 60 people live here on a daily basis, all year long. People coming from every part of the world that you can think of. I've had people from some countries and cities and places that you've never even heard before.
Mhm.
This is a very famous gym. There's a lot of great training partners, a lot of great instruction. So, but I deal mostly, like you said, behind the scenes with a lot of clash of personalities, people living together all the time. Obviously, it's not going to be easy. A lot of young kids, a lot of emotional kids, people from all kind of different backgrounds and different walks of lives. A lot of them come from troubled backgrounds, so it's on top of everything else that I do. I'm a psychiatrist and psychologist at the same time. If I could prescribe medication, I would because they all need meds, bro. You fighters are special kind of creatures and stuff. They're all chasing their dream, right? Because this gym gave birth to a lot of very famous and powerful fighters, right? Some of the biggest names in combat sports history. So a lot of these kids are following in those footsteps and seeking guidance from us, right? But again, it's we can't help every single one of them, right? It's a lot of it is chance, a lot of it is luck, a lot of it is just hardcore preparation and hardcore obsession, you know. And I deal with everyone's obsession about the sport, depending on um, trying to figure out which kind of way for us to build a career for them, to guide them, because a lot of kids have hard time holding jobs, they don't have high school education, they're all eggs in one basket, and they're looking at us for making their dreams come true, but a lot of them don't make the necessary steps to make the dreams come true. They don't listen, and they overreact. They're emotional beings, so a lot of it falls on my shoulders. So I constantly have to deal with trouble and the fighters get into. um, and On top of, I deal with sponsorships, partnerships, making sure all the classes are generating income. We have a lot of classes. We have classes going through morning to night that accommodate all kind of um, um, backgrounds and from beginner, amateur beginner, to all the way to pros, kids. We have a phenomenal wrestling program, JW wrestling program that's kicking ass. So we're growing the next generation of fighters. So it's pretty much everything, and I own JW Worldwide Sports Management Company that we put on about, I don't know, 3,000 fights in the past 3 years or so. It's a pretty well-oiled machine that I have some very good partners. Like I said, Jeffrey Chavez is a PhD, former Olympic boxer. He um, fought Floyd Mayweather in amateurs. Oscar De La Hoya has had a tremendous amateur background, understands fight game very well. Um, my partner Hector Galindo, who is a fight scheduler machine, he just makes fights happen. Um, either it's LFA, any kind of UFC Fight Pass promotions or any local promotions, our guys are fighting, So if you're talking about like the bigger management companies where they only focus on the select few, the cream of the crop, and they totally disregard all the lower level talent, we're actually building talent. We take guys from all the way from the bottom, we invest in them, we invest in our time, we build them and guide them through the steps of becoming the household names and becoming great fighters. I travel with them on the weekends as well, so it's like I go to other cities, to other states, to other countries, and help out with everything that needs to be helped out to get these fighters to the fight. Like I was wanted to mention, like Diego Brandao, right, the Ultimate Fighter season 14, very big name for Conor McGregor and stuff like that. He is winning like crazy, just three-time
Tough.
a tough enough champion right now. He was supposed to fight in karate combat. The guy didn't make weight. His opponent didn't make weight. They were trying to set him up and all that, and we had to actually fight through all that. A lot of promoter back and forth. Obviously, they want to make the fight happen. Diego was at a major disadvantage, so we decided to pull him out from the fight. The guy was extremely heavy, so we can't jeopardize Diego getting hurt.
Right.
So constant back and forth, and now actually he's going to Minsk, Belarus to fight in a Grand Prix for a lot of money. So it's nonstop. People do not see how much preparations go into the fights. So and we're involved in pretty much every single aspect of that. And I deal with partners, sponsors, pretty much making sure the overhead gets paid, chasing fighters for money, make sure everyone pays, um, getting fights with fighters all the time. So kind of constant, kind of keep my dukes up all the time too. They could always coming at me with some bullshit. But I'm made for this. I've been doing this for so long. I was part of Khabib Nurmagomedov's original management team when they first came to America, so I learned a lot from that. I'm from Russia myself, but so I deal with a lot of Russian fighters from former Soviet Union republics, things like that.
Okay. And, getting into like, your journey into MMA and all that, what ultimately led you into becoming, such a key figure at Jackson Wink?
Very circumstantial stuff, honestly. Like circumstances sometimes just align and make you um I guess be in the right place at the right time.
Hmm.
But also the desires. Um I've always been a fan of the sport, so we all are, right? Even the
Right.
coach, everything, people say, oh, he's just a fan. Well, we're all fans of the sport. We wouldn't be doing it because this is not a very big money-making sport, right? Unless you get guys like John Jones, Conor McGregor, Holly Holm, and get to that level of fighters, right? So, it's a constant fishing expedition, finding the talent, and there's way a lot more downs than ups, right? Because fighters lose way more than they win, and it's a very hard thing to experience. And but I mean, I grew up during the beginning of UFC when it's all started, and I was training and stuff and all that. And I was watching VHS tapes. I had a cable box that would watch Pride, and all my fighters were like Fyodor Emelianenko, Sergey Haritono from Pride. Like I was watching Alistair Overeem, who I ended up training with later on, which is like, and I always kind of told myself, I'd be like, how cool would that be, to be part of a major camp or part of major fight team and be backstage and doing all these things because like I knew my options were limited in becoming a fighter, because I came to America when I was like 15, 16 years old. I was
Hmm.
by myself, I was trying to find myself, go to school, work. I had to work a lot. Nobody was helping me really as much. So and then I was in the car business when I got to a certain point. I was, served in the Navy, then I got out, went in the car business, met a lot of powerful people, a lot of good people, and I was in New Jersey. I sold a very expensive car to one of the managers to that was part of the Red Fury fight team, original team that started bringing all this badass Dagestanis and Russians and Chechens and I started traveling with them all around the country and around the world, and that's how I ended up into all these camps and learning the business. And I was doing a lot of media as well, like you're doing, the podcast, the different things and stuff. Um, and it's been like 15 years ago and stuff, but like you said, everything has a beginning, right? So
Mhm.
as long as you have passion, you get into it. And then, one of the ways I came to Albuquerque with Adlan Amagov, Timur Valiev, Rustam Khabilov, like one of the first wave of badass Russian fighters that were like representing and um, representing Russia and representing, and competing. A lot of the fighters, they started going to different mega camps, right? And that time there was only like not that many, right? There was AKA, there was ATT, there was Jackson Wink MMA, right? So, and
Right.
I've been to them, I started traveling, and that's how I ended up here. And that time they were on the other side of town. They were starting outgrowing the facility because a lot of fighters were coming in from all around the world. They didn't have a place to stay. They had hard time driving and going places. That's why Coach Winklejohn was started building a new facility. And before you know it, he took me here. I was like, hey man, I can. And I had already a lot of administrative experience. I ran car dealerships. I ran call centers. I was pretty good at business stuff and computer knowledge and things like that. And pretty much we kind of started building this building, which is huge. And Greg and Wink were always the pioneers of MMA game, So we have department, I mean, dorms, apartments, and there's people nonstop looking to stay here. So we were like one of the first ones to become that super mega camp, And then everybody else started opening up dorms and stuff like that. So that's how I got into it.
Okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting, an interesting way to get into it and kind of find your way into the position you found your way.
A lot of it is self-investment, like if you want to do something right and you have passion for something, like if you like doing podcasts and just stick to it, you never know where it leads. You
Right.
might you might open up some other doors, in the sport if you're a really big MMA fan that you go after your passion. That's what I did for a couple of years. I invested myself. I went, traveled all around the world on my own dime, looking, studying, meeting personalities, meeting people, training with them, being their training partners, helping with diet. A lot of it is self, there's no college education for this type of sport, right?
Right.
It's comes from passion and obsession. So if you're obsessed and you have a passion for it, you're gonna go far. And just never give up because there's gonna be a lot of disappointments along the way in the sport. It's a very disappointing sport, like I said, because you lose way, way more than win. But those wins, when you get them, they feel like nothing you ever felt. So
Okay. And as you mentioned, the wins and stuff like that, you've been around so many high level fighters and, world champions. From your perspective, what do you think separates elite fighters from everyone else? And as well, like to that, especially mentally.
again, coming back to obsession, brother. It's like you got to be obsessed. You got to be obsessed with training, and you got to be disciplined. Even though when we talk discipline, and we know some of the fighters, even some of the biggest names, they not always showed the discipline required to be on top. But if they don't have a particular discipline to a certain extent, they have a particular obsession towards towards fighting and towards completely like John Jones. He studied so much. He studied so much. That's why his IQ became, what it became, right? Like that's why he was known for the highest IQ individual, right? Discipline, well, we all know what he went through, right? But
Right.
it, then there's Khabib, who's obsessed and disciplined, right? George St. Pierre, who's obsessed and disciplined, but then John Jones is obsessed, but maybe not as disciplined, but so talented, so gifted. But at the same time, you develop those gifts, right? Like you cannot. That's why they have the saying, right? That the hard work beats talent, right? So
Yeah.
it's. I see guys here living on the mat, sleeping on the mat. It's all they dream, eat, breathe MMA, And how many of them do you think make it? Barely any, you know. So at the highest level, it's something that these guys possess is un, unprecedented work ethic. It's like, um, I mean, if you see how the home train, it's you can see like the difference like that. You look at it and it's like that's elite. That's a workhorse. That's a race horse. That is a state of the art championship fighter. You know, like molded to be who she became. And a lot of fighters when they're younger, they fall trap into um, doing bad things, you know, and thinking that, you know, they're bigger than they actually are. The
Right.
e the egos get in the way. Um, discipline, not discipline gets in the way. Not listening gets in the way. And I've seen way more careers being extinguished, like a little fire extinguisher, you know,
Hmm.
self-ruined than actual careers that are made. And again, that's why you see only 0.1% of elite people make it, right? And
Right.
then the guys to get to the UFC and they as far as they can get on that elite level, but they still are not the top percent of that 1%, right?
Right.
So it just it's a miracle like to be born under that particular light, you know, where you have pretty much every single card falls into play that needed for you to be successful. And but a lot of those cards got to be played right, you know. So and a lot of young kids coming up, they don't play their cards right.
Just try to rush in.
Yeah, they tried to rush it. They want to, you know, they see John Jones became world champion, what, like 23 in UFC, right? Like it's one in a gazillion, right?
Right.
Uh, so you can't measure yourself to somebody like that. You know, you got to measure yourself to yourself and to your abilities and to where you need to become who you need to become. And I always tell fighters, I'm like, because they live here and a lot of them dirty as hell, you know, they live like pigs. And I'm like, and I'm always fighting that, you know, I'm like, how are you gonna become a world champion if you can't become a champion in your own life? You know, where you have no discipline, you live like a pig, you don't take care of your training partner, you smoke, you drink, you go party and stuff like that. You know, you're not John Jones yet, you know. You
Right.
know, so I'm like, and just gotta be the best version of yourself. That's all this. And every day you wake up and you think about it and it's like, what is my goal? What do I want to achieve? What do I want to become? And you bust your ass to do that. Because Holly Holm was already boxing world champion and she was weighing tables. A lot of fighters think that weighing tables or cleaning toilets is above them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But life is hard, bro. Like you have no education. You're not going to school. You know, what do you think? You're going to become like what is your goal? What is your idea of how the life works? You know, you have grown up people that experienced all that and they tell you like, hey, this is a path you need to do. We'll work 24/7. Coach Wink works 24/7. Greg Jackson will start working 24/7. We're not sitting playing, jerking off on our phones, right?
Right.
Coach Wink always says, so get your priorities straight.
Okay. Um, usually early on, are you able to kind of see in a fighter like, this fighter has high level potential, or do you kind of have to see how the fighter carries themselves? How you said, if they have kind of that ability to stay disciplined and kind of be hungry to, be better.
Yes, yes. We see a lot of great potential working. And I felt guilty into a lot of that of thinking because I've trained with all the guys. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I've trained and I spar with all the guys. I'm older now, obviously, but I've trained with all of them. I anytime somebody new came in, I ended up on the mats with them, knowing who they are, what they're capable of, and how strong they feel. Like I was able to gauge it like first person, like first person shooter type of stuff, like right there, right? Like I
Mm.
say like, oh, this kid could be something, right? But again, and I've said myself so many times where like this would be the guy, this would be the guy, this would be the guy, this would be the guy. And they never became that guy because when they start believing themselves that they are that guy, I had guys that they come in here like, oh, I don't need you. I don't need Greg and Wink. I don't need you guys. I'm going to become world champion anywhere and just see him fold nonstop. That's like, because I follow their careers, that's why this gym has been successful. But people always look and think that the grass is green on the other side. There's plenty of fighters that left on a bad note, shut the door, like I always say, don't burn the bridge, right? Because you never
Right.
know. A lot of fighters live owning money, living on a bad note, even though we've never done anything to them, right? Let's say many things, many personalities, right, happen. They believe like, oh, I'm the next big thing. Like, I need Greg in my corner. Like, I need him to work with me 24/7, even though like, what have you done for anyone really? Like, everybody, it's the ego thing. It's me first, right? Like I always tell people, add value to the team. You have to add value. Like, why do we need to give you our time? Especially when you can't afford to pay to be here, right? You can't afford to be anything really. You're young, you haven't brought anything to anyone, you haven't proved yourself to anyone.
Right.
Why do we need to jump high when you say jump high? Like you need us more than we need you, right? Because you want us to build your career.
Right.
And then a lot of times, fighters, when they lose, they blame the coach and they blame everything else but themselves. But then you're like, bro, but like, let's say they got submitted, right, in a fight. But you're like, I've never even seen you in the grappling class, bro. Like, why are you going to the fight? Like, we have a system, obviously, you have to clear to go to the fight, right?
Right.
You get to get cleared by the coaches once the fight comes through. We always check with the coaches, a good fight, we evaluate this and that. But a lot of kids jump jump through um jump through and not follow instructions that they're given. And they end up losing, and then somehow everything, no matter what, it's always our fault, somehow. Not all the time, but it's always a finger pointing. It's not about evaluating yourself because we are there for the fighter always. We do not
Right.
try to hurt anybody. We, like I always tell success, if you succeed, we succeed. If you fail, we fail, right? So we do everything possible for you to succeed, but you got to be a team player. You got to be always on our side. If you come into train under our roof, right? You expecting us to build your career. You expect us to give you things. You expect us to give you accommodations. You expect us to train. You expect us to give you undivided attention, hours of hours in training, just for you to either leave, give us a middle finger, turn the back on us, go to Vegas or go to ATT, blah blah blah, and never make it in there. Because I know everybody. They go, they disappear, and they're never to be seen again. Even though they're the ones that say, "I'm going to be the next John Jones." Well, in order to be a next John Jones, you're gonna do some of the John Jones things and stay with the team that actually helped him to become John Jones, as well as many other greats, right? But a lot of people are looking for instant gratification. And John Jones and Holly Holm and all these people, they did not become who they became over over a month or a year, or it's a long time. It's a long journey, bro. You know.
Okay. And going into kind of, you oversee a lot of the fighters, ranging from developing prospects to established UFC veterans. How do you balance, individualized attention while maintaining a broader competitive standard to the gym?
It's a juggling act, It's a balancing act, juggling. Remember like Coach Greg and Coach Wink, as well as myself. I started happening. We have other coaches that they travel, they gone every weekend, every week. Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is almost always gone, right? We have no family time almost. And on Monday, right back to the grind, to the gym, right? But we love the sport so much. We love our fighters so much, right? That we always find time. And we have a lot of loyal athletes, of course. We have a lot of loyal athletes, a lot of people that will break their backs for us. It's as much as we would, for all of our guys that we love. But again, it's a mutual um it's a mutual playing ground, right? It's a give and take. Because in this business, a lot of people's like, "What gave you? What have you gave me lately?" Right? Even though, like I keep saying, and then like, "What have you done for the team for us to help you?" So, and with a lot of when the guys make it to a higher level, and obviously start getting way more money. A lot of more people get in their ears. The different management companies come in, different people, start this and we'll do this for you, we'll do that for you, which most of the time does not happen. So loyalty is very important in this team, in this sport, especially for people that gave you unconditional love and unconditional support.
Hmm.
And it's very rare in this business where it goes that way. It's um, a lot of people don't see what inside of the camp day to day looks like and what kind of situations we have to deal with and how many times we have to get fighters out of trouble and get them back on track because we care for them, so because when you see people for years, face to face, and you see what they go through, you see them go through their losses, you see them going through their wins, and how the personality changes, and how they start making way, way, way more money when they weren't making it before, and how sometimes they change for the worse, or they change for the better, or they start give more because they're grateful, or so it's in my mind, it's always like, hey, I gotta maintain my own standard of stability
Hmm.
because it's a very chaotic and unstable business. So, with very unstable people. So, us, Greg, me, Wink, and a bunch of other supporting staff, we have to constantly work on ourselves to keep ourselves stable so we can, because you're under high pressure situations, right? You've seen Greg in the corners, you've seen Wink in the corner. I just was in the corner of one of the Russian fighters and he lost, and it's extremely painful because so much goes through it, right? That's why Greg Jackson always said victories are for my fighters, the losses are for me. And I was watching the fight yesterday, and it is very painful to see somebody that traveled overseas from Siberia, Russia, to come here with one goal in mind, And I told the guy, like, brother, you traveled so far, so many sacrifices. We're not going home without the victory, like it's impossible. Just stay strong, get through that third round. It was 1-1. It was for one for, the third round was for the grabs. Whoever won the third round would likely win the fight. And he gets knocked out. First punch the guy throws, so and you're like, oh man, that's so painful. And then the backstage, you go backstage and you see how that like dream faded, because one loss puts you right back into especially if you're a top prospect and you're like on the verge of signing, you're like 1-2 wins away, right? And then
Right.
split second, so
Shit.
unpredictable.
Like,
It's so painful, bro. Even more painful probably for the fighter because fighter feels like he failed. He apologizes to me, man, because I'm so sorry that I didn't win the fight. I'm like, bro, there's nothing to apologize about, nothing to apologize about. And I feel like I failed because I didn't give him the right advice, for example, or I didn't get his mind straight, or whatever thousand things that I could have done differently for him to to help him win the fight. It's like the same thing with Greg and Wink. It's a very painful sport, brother, like special because you're in such a spotlight. Everybody watches you, and you got to perform to the best of your ability. And sometimes the best of your ability is just not enough.
You witness, the sport evolve significantly throughout the years. From a coaching perspective and, watching people develop from a standpoint, where do you think you've seen the most dramatic changes over the years in the sport?
So many dramatic changes, but I mean, you see, like I always tell people that we are still in the infancy of the sport, right? If you look at the boxing, right, it's what over 100 years, right, of developing the sport, right, and so many things, so many legendary fighters, so many different eras, right, from
Uh-huh.
Muhammad Ali to Mike Tyson to everything, we literally us, I'm not sure how old you are, but like I was born literally through the rise of MMA. I was 15 years old when MMA came on the scene. Like UFC started operating, like started doing things in 1993 when VHS tapes came out and all that stuff. So the evolution of the sport was so fast, right? Like so many, so dramatic and so fast that we're still in the infancy of the sport. We still don't know what the long terms and what are the consequences, because we're what, maybe a couple generations in, right?
Yeah,
Look at the grades of the sport that, from original, Tank Abbott to all the, Gary Goodrich from original and Fedor Emelianenko coming in and John Jones. I mean, this is like select few legendary names, right? If you look at the sport of boxing, there's like so many, right? Because the sport existed for so long. So, I mean, when UFC became a machine like they became, so and with opening of UFC PI Center, um, it's it became very hard to operate on a world class stage. If we were like the number one MMA gym in the world for so many years, right? Like every publication listed Jackson Wink MMA as number one, right?
right,
And with the rise of the sport, so many fighters came through here. So many people learned from us, right? So many people from all over the world came, learned, and then they left, and then they opened up gyms all around the world, and then so many other big mega camps started happening. The city kickboxing in New Zealand, right? In Australia, where New Zealand, Australia, somewhere over there, Australia, right? I think, yeah. So then we used to get a lot of Australians come here, a lot of New Zealanders come here and train with us, right? From Kyle Noak to Brogan Anderson, I remember like guys that are like big names over there. Arlene Blanco was a long time out fighter, right? But now people have no, they don't really need to travel as much and go whatever. There's a major gym in every state, major gym, and you got Arizona, Henry C. Hooger, right, with Fight Ready. You have, Extreme Couture, you have Vegas, you have CPI, you have ATT, you have down in Texas. There's some pretty much there's almost a mega gym in every state.
right.
Some mega gym, right? So and it became very hard to recruit people, and it was very dramatic and a lot of scandals happened within our gym, like ours. So that was a very dramatic experience for me because when I got into the business, I was like, holy crap, I'm surrounded, by John Jones, Holly Holm, Donna Cerrone, John Dodson, Diego Sanchez, Michelle Watterson, I mean, Tim Kennedy, I mean, it go on and on and on. Yoel Romero coming in, Olympians, blah, 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 right? But then drama happens, right? Then you had Rashad Evans versus John Jones, drama, right? Alistair Overeem versus Andrei Arlovsky, major drama, right? Then you have Donald Cerrone versus Mike Perry, major drama. Diego Sanchez and George St. Pierre, major drama. And then George St. Pierre, Carlos Condit, major drama, right? Because then you have all these top dogs under the same room, and then they're in the same weight class, and now they got to fight, right? That clash happens, right? Boom, so major egos, major the camps get divided, and UFC used to love messing around with big camps like that. They would pit fighters within the same gym. Imagine these guys were training partners. Now they got to fight each other, right? So it's like now
Right.
you can go pick a side, and to me that was very painful. And if you pick your own side, they're all big personalities, and they bash you, they trash you, they destroy you, they talk shit about you, and they have big platforms. And it was like it hurt the gym a lot, and there was intentionally that they tried to do, even though we not intentionally tried to hurt any one of them. It just like What do we do? You have two mega stars, they're going at it. What do we do? So that was a big dramatic changes to the camp. So right now we're in the rebuilding stages, right? Because first a lot of these guys retired, some left, some went to other gyms, but a lot of them got older. Because I remember you got Andrei Arlovsky versus Overeem, right? I don't know if I mentioned. That was all happening under this roof, right? And those bigger than life personalities. So I witnessed all of that stuff. And that starts weighing heavy on coaches and on me. And then you go on social media, you start reading about all these things that happen, and then obviously the fans and the media takes sides, right? And then they start trashing you for being more loyal to John Jones and dropping Rashad Evans, even though they don't know anything that happened behind the scenes. They don't know anything that led to anything, right? It's just like a broken phone. So when people only build opinions on what someone wrote or someone would said, they don't have like nobody ever asked us like, hey, what really happened? Because they really want the drama side of it. And we try to be as drama less as possible, but keeps following everybody.
Okay. And sorry. Looking back on your journey so far, what has been the most rewarding part of being in the position and helping develop fighters?
As I mentioned, getting their hands raised, you know, getting their hand raised and seeing a fighter that they come from nothing and they come from completely and they start at the bottom and then they become in somebody. And not necessarily in MMA, but that opens up doors for them into other ventures. As like Keith Jardine becoming you know, an actor almost in every movie, like Michelle Waterson right now. Just saw her yesterday, grappling tournament. She's doing all kind of movies on Netflix and stuff like that. So it's like I like that it sets them up for different things, because you're not going to fight forever, right? So
Right.
it's always about like, hey, I know you're lost now. I know you're young now. I know you don't know what the road, what the future holds for you, but you have to set yourself up for a career after fighting, right? That like don't, because I always tell fighters you're one punch or one kick away or one knockout away from never fighting again, right? So it's about how you approach fighting, how you approach your wins and losses, because losses are almost guaranteed, almost like 95% guaranteed. Only select few fighters, like Habib, never suffered a loss. John Jones. It's very select few, right?
Right.
So it's almost guaranteed. So in order for you to become the next big thing or overcome that, Anderson Silva had four losses, right? Like came to UFC with two losses already, being humbled and submitted and things like that to become the greatest ever. Amanda Nunes had multiple losses. Halle has multiple losses. It's about guiding them and seeing and overcoming those losses and all experiences with them, and for them becoming something that we didn't know they could be, because
Right.
know you never know who rises up through the ranks. Like Steve Garcia right now, he was never given a chance. He was disregarded. He's not a talker. He doesn't talk much. He's not on the mic. He was disregarded by UFC. He was disregarded by everyone. He's on an 8 fight winning streak
Right.
with all knockouts, right? He's top 8 in the world. That's what we're talking about. I've seen him fight locally on the smaller shows, bloody ass fights, crazy fights, animal, you know, but suffered some losses, learned from them, never stopped grinding, never stopped moving forward. And look, he's shining big and he's on the verge of making it, fighting some big names, um, and putting out some great shows. That's the stories that we live for. Those are the stories that inspire us, and that's my inspiration.
Okay. What do you think, are some misconceptions people have about what it takes to operate, and sustain a world-class MMA gym and, a sports management team like you have?
Oh, brother, there's so many, man. So many. People only see you for a couple minutes on the arena and a couple minutes into the fight, but there's so many misconceptions. A lot of like always people say, that's the biggest one. People always say, like, why do you need a manager? Why does a fighter need a manager? Like, why? Why do you need a manager? Why you gotta pay a manager? Like, just, you get a contract from him, you see you sign it. I'm like, listen, MF, how you think that fighter got to UFC to begin with? Do you think it just contract just fell in his lap? We have fighters here we've been building from amateurs, right? We invest money in them, we house them, we do their media, we feed them, we help them with their medicals because they're always broke and they can't afford it. Okay, we drive them, we fly with them. Like I just went with a fighter to the fights. It cost me personally out of my own pocket $500. Okay, myself, right? The fighters are fighting for pennies, $500 to show, $500 to win. So don't you think that a guy like me that invested so much time and energy, and on top of that, coaching, right? The coaches that give him unlimited amount of time. Do you think that when the fighter gets to UFC, we don't deserve a return on our investment, and we don't deserve to live through that victory of a fighter making to UFC after all the years and amount of sweat and blood and tears that we put into the fighter, and then he makes it to UFC, and you got those knuckleheads on social media saying like, "You don't need a manager. Screw those guys. Why do you need a manager? You already need." But how do you think that guy got to that point? We scheduled them fights, we grinded, we scheduled all their medicals, we got for absolutely zero money in the net negative, bro. Net negative. you know? So that's a huge misconception, a huge disrespect. Yes, there's a lot of managers that when they make it big and they do some big things, a lot of shady shit going on with power management, but not on our end. Trust me, not on our end. I promise you, not on our end. We've scheduled so many fights, and a lot of them, yeah, we get our whatever 10%, 15% from the fight, but at least to recoup a little bit of money that we invested and a little bit of energy. Um, but that's where I have a major grievance with the fans and with the media, where they say like, screw the managers. But maybe a manager is kind of a sleazy word, but it's the support. It's the support that goes behind the scenes.
Right.
I think a lot of these fighters, they can't even read the contract properly. They don't understand any of that. They don't understand. They just sign anything, bro. You know what I'm saying? So our job is to guide them, make sure, they don't get stuck somewhere that they need to be stuck. And we're not always right. We're always under a lot of pressure because I've been pressured by fighters like, I need to be in UFC. I'm ready to fight. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Sometimes you give in because they demand, even though we try to bring everybody um, to the, you know, to the ground and be like, bro, this is not good for you. But they have no patience. A lot of the young kids don't have no patience. We've been young. We've done some impatient things. It caused us a lot of grievances and a lot of problems. So you need grown-ups to guide you through mistakes that possibly on that you can make, right? That we're
Right.
kind of already going to make. So and then get disrespected like that. That when a fighter makes it to UFC, and it happens a lot, that you will build the fighter to that level where they're so close to UFC, and they will leave you, and they go with a power manager that they think can get them to UFC, and you're pretty much screwed. So all the years that you put into the fighter, trained them, housed them, they lived here for free because they couldn't afford to hold on to the job, and you provided it to them because you believed in them, and then they go to another manager or they go to another gym. You think that's fair?
Nah, I mean, essentially, it wouldn't be fair now. We're
Exactly.
putting a lot of time and effort into trying to get them to what they want.
We're in people's business, brother, and people are people, right? They will
Right.
always look for what's best for themselves, and so do we. We all do, but we're in a given business. We are in a given business, so and it has to be a two-way traffic in order to for both of us to succeed.
Right. Okay. You know, and going back into that, kind of the whole new generation has recently begun, and a lot of people have been saying the new generation of MMA is starting to follow and come into place. What advice would you have, for that next generation of fighters who are chasing to reach the highest level of the sport?
I mean, if you reach the highest level of the sport, I mean, it's you have to be realistic, right? Like you have to be realistic. Not everybody's meant to be John Jones or Khabib, right? Like, but you can be, and if you follow, like for example, like Khabib is a big example for what I use for all the fighters. They are obsessed, and the whole team is obsessed. That's why they're winning everything, right? Everything, all the belts, they hold everything. They have killers coming out of there. It's a discipline. They don't drink, they don't smoke, and they eat, sleep, breathe MMA. They train like madmen.
Right,
There's no talking back. There's no coming late for practices. There's no where we as Americans fail now is in our discipline, is in our abundance of things. Our like a lot of those guys, they have no choice but to fight, and to win. You rarely ever see them not giving their all when they're there in practice or outside of practice or in life. So it's shutting the hell up. It's doing what you asked to do. It's becoming champion in life first. Making sure your house organized. Make sure your life is organized. Make sure you have a job to pay for the bills. Make sure you are there to take care of your team that's invested into you, right? If you want Coach's Wink and Coach Greg's attention, right? You got to be that outstanding. You got to be outstanding in everything you do. That uh, be in all their practices. Okay, make effort into everything and show your effort and show that you are the one that you're worth being invested into. As simple as that. Like anything else in life. When you get a new job and you go into a job, right? Are you going to be a knucklehead or are you going to make an impression because you're trying to get ahead, right? Not to compare this, but this is your job, right? You are here. Why? Because you're looking at Greg Jackson, Coach Winklejohn, and everybody else at what we've done and what we can do for your career, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, right? So be that outstanding person that is pleasure to work with. You have to be a pleasure to work with. You have to shut the hell up when coaches are speaking. You have to shut the hell up when you're being reprimanded. You have to shut the hell up and you show up. You're a soldier. You're a soldier. You're representing the team. You're a soldier. Soldiers don't talk back. I consider Greg and Wink as generals, right? You don't mess with them. You don't talk back to them. You want their attention? Prove it. Why they need to give you their attention? Who are you? Just got off the street. You're literally a bum. Says it, you're a bum. You want to rise up above being a bum? There's a lot of steps we can tell you on how to do it. But if you don't listen, stay bum. Simple.
okay. I feel like that's a strong advice, a strong message. you know this is kind of my final question. When your career is eventually looked back on, when they think about your role with Jackson Wink and, in the sports management world, what do you hope your contribution to the sport and to other fighters you work with ultimately presents?
Uh, One thing, brother, I do not think about that at all. It's not for me. This is I have sons. I have that's my big focus on making sure they're successful. That's where I want to be remembered to my sons that I've done everything possible to give them a better life. Everything else in the MMA world is I'm a behind the scenes, brother. I never tried to be the front man on anything really. I do some podcasts here and there to just kind of practice and discuss things and kind of get my mind flowing and kind of sometimes tell certain stories, of like you said, like misconceptions of them. Yeah, like I like that point of kind of like most people don't see that, but like I don't I don't know what my legacy is. Like it's to me, it's non-existent. I'm not thinking about my legacy. I won one. I know Greg and Wink have major legacy in the sport, but I'm not trying to leave one. My legacy belongs to my family, like for my sons. That's a legacy I want to live to them. Legacy for this, I want legacy to continue legacy of Jackson Winklejohn because I was put in the power of that we have to bring this camp back to the highest standard that we can. And it's a big battle. So I want to be known that the camp suffered major ups and downs, and my legacy, I guess. And again, I'm still young. I don't know where my roads will lead. And of course, I want to build a major MMA management company that competes with the best of them, right?
Right.
With, either Iridium or Sucker Punch or Dominance or any of the FRM or any of those major companies, right? It just they were fortunate enough to start in the beginning of the sport earlier, and then build it into mega management companies. But the legacy is of course chasing championships. The legacy is giving the young kids that cherish what we do. They want to work with us, giving them the future, right? Because we're in the people's business, we're in the fighter business. So I don't think I deserve a legacy. I'm nobody, bro. Honest to God, the way I think about it, it's just love the sport. I grind like everyone else. I don't want to. I don't want a legacy or like whatever. Like I don't even know what legacy I should deserve. I don't think I deserve anything else. So, so it's being humble. Fighters become legacy. They build legacies, right, in a fight game. If I'm more in a supporting legacy. If I can support the guy and get him to UFC and get him to the top, I mean, that kind of becomes my legacy where I can say, hey, I build a UFC champion, or I build this champion, I build that champion. That is already satisfactory for me enough. Legacy, it's like, who cares? At the end of the day, when we're 6 feet under, nobody cares about it, right? You get forgotten there really quick. So it's pretty much.
Okay. Michael, Mikael, your insight, your perspective carry tremendous value, and we appreciate your time and taking it to speak with us. For those watching, this is Sherwin's MMA, delivering direct access to you and with the sharpest minds in the MMA world. Thank you again for your time, and thank you again for the opportunity. And we appreciate giving us exclusive insight into your world and the way you work on a day to day basis. So I appreciate it again, and thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a pleasure, brother. I'll send some fighters your way. Okay, let's stay in touch. All right.
No, yeah, for sure. We'll stay in touch. I mean, like I said, I'm trying to grow still, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to, get into that insight and be able to interview your guys' fighters and kind of, build that way as well.
That's my pleasure. That's what we do, brother. If we recognize that you're trying to do something good for the sport, so we're here to support everybody that's adds value to